In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to build a sub $2,000 gaming PC build that is going to be awesome for 1440p gaming in all of the latest titles. A build that on the face of it might have a slightly confusing CPU and GPU combo, but a system that I hope is going to make a whole lot of sense and contain parts you might actually be able to buy. Now, before you go ahead into the comment section and go, James, why have you picked an RTX 5070 Ti? It provides performance that's beat out by the cheaper RX 9070 XT. And James, an Intel CPU. This channel has lost the plot. GeekaWhat has gone mental. What's going on? Let me explain. Let's start with the GPU. Aside from being one of the better 50 series launches with a $50 price drop over the 4070 Ti Super and a better performance uplift than what we saw from the likes of the 5080, you can actually buy this card in lots of regions for in and around MSRP. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but James, the 9070 XT from AMD, which launched after this GPU, is $150 less and provides fairly similar performance, even in my own testing. And you would be right to say that, but AMD just aren't being all that honest about MSRPs, in my opinion. You see, Overclockers, which is a retailer here in the UK, even came out and said that they could only offer 9070 XTs at MSRP on the day of launch, and they've never been able to do so since. The reason being, as far as I understand, is that AMD actually has to provide a rebate to retailers or board partners to meet the MSRP, meaning that if the likes of Overclockers were to sell at MSRP, they would be losing money. Fathom that one out. Now, having been some time since the launch, it may be that AMD has now sorted this out, and it's just taking some time to reflect in the market. But until they do, the 5070 Ti, if you want a card right now and you don't want to wait for a stock drop at 6 or 8 weeks in the future, is the card you're going to want to buy. Now let me explain then why I've gone for an Intel CPU. Now this is the Core Ultra 225F and it's part of Intel's bulked out Intel Core Ultra lineup. When these chips first launched, we only of course had the top end Core Ultra 5, 7 and 9 chips. The cheaper CPUs have now arrived. It's also worth pointing out that Intel have made positive strides with their motherboards. This MSI B860 Tomahawk Wi-Fi is a really great example of that. You now get memory overclocking on the cheaper chipset motherboards, hallelujah, as well as widespread PCI Gen 5 support, Wi-Fi 7, and even Thunderbolt 4, which you're not going to get on the AMD counterparts. Plus, because not many people are buying Core Ultra right now, these B860 boards are actually fairly reasonably priced and are in some instances cheaper than what you're going to pay for the more popular B850 chipset. As far as RAM or memory is concerned, I've gone for a 32GB kit from G.SKILL. This is their Trident Z5 Neo, and I'm going to pair this up with a pretty fast MP44L SSD from Teamgroup. Really like both of these kits. The SSD reviewed really well over on GeekaWhat.com, which you can check out in the links in the description below. And for the price, I highly recommend it for a system like this. Briefly, let's talk about CPU cooling. I've gone probably slightly overkill here compared to what I needed to with the ID Cooling FX360 IMF. The reason is, at the time of filming, this is coming out on a special at like $70. It's really, really cheap. And for the sake of an extra $30 compared to, say, a Hyper 212 Pro that we used in a recent build, I think it's going to be worthwhile. Plus, it's going to add a bit of RGB lighting flair and some better overall system airflow to the case, which is a nice little bonus. Talking of the case, this is a little different. Now, this is what MSI are calling their Velox 300R. And if you've been watching the channel for a little while, you'll know that I'm a bigger fan of MSI cases now than I ever have been. Back in the day, they had some slightly questionable options, but this for the price looks pretty decent. Other than the large tempered glass side panel on the side and fairly expansive internal layout that allows you to mount radiators at the top or even at the side in an intake config, this chassis has a few party tricks up its sleeve. We get a sneak peek at those party tricks by looking at this rear fan, which as you'll notice actually has an inner and outer ring with different fan blades. Now this is actually continued if I take the front panel of the case off, which is nice and toolless and easy to remove, where you will find some much larger versions, again with the same inner and outer split, and these are actually 160mm intake fans. So bigger, of course, than the 120s and 140s we're used to seeing, and with what MSI call their new Vortex design. Now what this is going to do is supposedly allow the outer ring to improve general airflow, and this inner, more directional ring to give you just that, more directional airflow that's targeted targeted at key components. So presumably the top one, if you've got an air cooler, it's going to go straight through the fins on the air cooler, and the bottom fan is really going to aim towards the graphics card to try and improve cooling there. There's a few other cool features like an integrated GPU support bracket, which looks pretty good, integrated power supply shield, room for the reverse connector motherboards, which MSI call Project Zero, of course Gigabyte's Project Stealth and Asus's BTF. And if you spin the case around to the rear, we've got a really nice integrated fan and ARGB hub as well. And all of this is offered up for what I actually think is a pretty competitive price. And I'll leave latest pricing and availability for everything mentioned today down in the description below. I think I've covered off pretty much all the parts, just the power supply remains. I've gone for the Cooler Master GX3 750 Gold. It's an ATX3 super efficient PCI 5 power supply with a 750 watt output. The 5070 Ti has an officially recommended PSU from Nvidia of 750 watts, so this is going to be fine, and our CPU is pretty power efficient. If there's one thing Intel got right with Core Ultra, it's power efficiency, so no concerns or worries for me in this build about power. Normally in my gaming PC builds, I'd start by installing as many parts into the motherboard as possible, but I think I might do things a bit differently today. Keep you guys on your toes and start by installing the motherboard in the case and installing everything while the case is laid down flat. If you are using a reverse connect motherboard, this is what I'd recommend, as the connectors can get damaged if you try and lean them on the table. The case has the right cutouts and will hold the board more securely. Talking of standoffs and cutouts, everything in this case is going to be okay. It's an ATX board and ATX case, and everything is already in the right positions. That makes sliding the motherboard in actually a very simple process. Just make sure you've got it properly aligned over all of the standoffs in the case. You then need to just grab this little accessory box out of the case and use the included motherboard screws to secure the motherboard into the chassis. It feels like ages since I've installed an Intel CPU. So many of the builds on the channel nowadays are just AMD focused, and it's nice occasionally to do something a little bit different. And of course, I'm pretty intrigued to see how these new Intel chips hold up against AMD's 9000 lineup. I don't want to write Intel off because Core Ultra actually fixed a lot of the problems that Intel had on 13th and 14th gen. It just didn't deliver a huge performance uplift in the process. I'm also going to pop the RAM and SSD in at this stage. This G.SKILL kit is one of my favorite looking DDR5 kits on the market right now. It's fairly high profile in that the heat spreaders are quite tall, but obviously we've got an AIO in this build, so it isn't going to cause any problems. Slide and click. And MSI, quite usefully, have actually pre-released all of the little retention clips on the bottom of the slots. Not actually seen a motherboard brand do that before. I'm then going to slide the case forward a little bit to allow for the installation of the M.2 drive, with the MP44L securing into the top TOMAHAWK branded slot on the motherboard today. So just lift that out, slide the drive into the slot at sort of a 45-degree angle. There is a little toolless retention clip down here, so let's get that roughly in the right position. There we go, little something like so. And then just return the TOMAHAWK branded heatsink back into place, sliding from the left to the right, and it should, with a bit of luck, click in. There we go, just like that. The next stage of the build is then the CPU cooler. I've used this ID cooling design a couple of times in a couple of videos, not sponsored, just really quite like it. And for the money, I think it's really, really competitive. It's certainly a design that takes the battle to Montage Hyperflow 360, which is sort of my default go-to cooler when I'm looking for an AIO that isn't going to break the bank for a price-conscious build. The only thing the Montage cooler does do that I like is it actually pre-installs all the fans. It's not a huge deal. Obviously, it's something that's pretty easy to actually carry out, but it's a nice touch that ID Cooling could consider if they're looking to make the life of the installer of this cooler a little bit easier. Even still though, it's just 12 screws, so 4 on each fan to get these secured down, and then the radiator is going to screw into the case from the other side. Once the fans are on, I'm then just going to slide the cooler into the top of the case. This case is quite tall, so we're not going to need to worry about being able to reach power connectors and stuff, as there's loads of clearance, quite frankly. And you can see the radiator is going to sit around about there. So let me go ahead and also screw that in. In order to then get the water block on, I was like, where are all the screw holes? It's an Intel board, so of course I'm going to need to add a backplate. So add this backplate on and then screw in these male-to-male screws, which is going to give us 4 posts for the CPU cooler. And then add these 2 brackets on to the screw threads that are now poking through. That's going to give us a really, really nice platform from which to actually fasten the water block onto, as long as I don't keep dropping them. So there you go, you can see they line up nice and easily and secure down with the 4 included thumb screws. a drop of ID Cooling branded thermal paste, although any thermal paste will do, and the water block would have fixed into place if I hadn't installed the brackets in the wrong positions. What I've done, it's a pretty easy error to make. I've popped the brackets down the sides when actually they should be at the top and the bottom, which has also affected how the thermal paste has then spread out when I've placed the block down. So I'm going to undo my mistakes, solve this problem, and I'll be back with you in just a second. And the next step is the graphics card. Of course, I'm saving the cable and wiring till last, which you probably shouldn't save till last, but I'm just kind of excited to get the GPU in. Now, this is the Gaming Trio. It used to be called the Gaming X Trio. This is just the Gaming Trio MSI card. I have reviewed their Ventus 3X 5070 Ti, which is a little cheaper. This is going to give us a few more bells and whistles, but in a fairly similar form factor. So it's still around about, yeah, it's a 2-slot design with a tiny bit of overhang. It's a little bigger. The build feels a bit better with an all-metal backplate, but the shroud itself is still plastic. And you get a nice bit of extra RGB for good measure too. Now, in today's build, I need to figure out which of the rear PCI slots to be removed. And I'm looking at the case, and it looks to me like slots 2 and slots 3. The GPU support bracket is going to be moved up in a moment once the card is in to adequately support the weight. This is going to help with sort of GPU sag in the long term. That's not going to fit, is it? And keep the GPU upright. If you are building this system at home and you've got an LTT screwdriver, doesn't fit. Although I could just do that instead. MSI actually have a cool little PCI lock and unlock button, so I'm going to hit that to unlock the lane, remove the black plastic cover from the GPU, and then slide the 5070 Ti into place. You don't get the satisfying click sound. Instead, you've got to find the lock button and manually put it back in, and that'll stop the card from being pulled out, and then fasten it down with those 2 screws we took out from just a moment ago. That really doesn't fit now. If you're prepared to have a scratched screwdriver shaft, it might fit. That sounds quite painful. I'm going to get another screwdriver. That seems the more sensible idea. This one's longer and a bit more thin. I'm then going to screw the GPU bracket from the rear, loosen this off, push it up, get it situated nicely, and tighten it into place. And as you can see from the front, that's going to stop the graphics card from, well, sagging. And then the final stage in all the build is the power supply. Cooler Master's 750 watt GX3 Gold. Now this is ATX3 PCI 5s. It's going to have the new 12 volt high power connection, which is going to go straight into the GPU. And I'm going to go ahead and install this as well as all the front panel cables before taking a look at not only how good this system looks once it's all powered up, but the kind of performance on offer too. So performance. I know some of you will be skeptical. This is a Core Ultra build. What impact does that have on frame rates? And is this system really any good? Well, on your screen now is a summary of all the results we were able to gather from this build. I've also got to give a big shout out to MSI for kindly sending over their 272 URX QD OLED for all of our benchmarking today. Now, taking a closer look into one or two titles, and Apex Legends at 1440p high performs incredibly well, over 250 FPS on average. Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440p high frankly knocks it out of the park with nearly 150 FPS in the gaming benchmark mode, while the new Doom the Dark Ages also performs very well with a very similar frame rate to what we saw in Cyberpunk, but at that lower 1080p resolution. High settings sees just shy of 150 FPS with 147.3 on average. What do you guys think of this build? Let me know in the comments down below. You can find latest pricing and availability at the links in the description too. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.